Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Butterwhat Show. I'm Pat Regan, and I'm joined here with my lovely assistant, Brian C. Moses, the DIY NAS guy from briancmoses.com. And he's going to talk at me mostly. I'm sure I'll ask him some questions. But he's going to talk at me about how he's been enjoying or not enjoying or his experiences so far in about a month with TrueNAS Scale on his new DIY NAS.
So I recently crossed over the threshold of using TrueNAS Scale for 2 months now. Previously, for the last 10 years, I've been using FreeNAS, which is now called TrueNAS Core. And when I built the DIY NAS 2022 edition and decided to keep it for myself, I wanted to give TrueNAS Scale a shot. I wanted to see what the differences were, whether I liked it better or not. I was really excited. They keep, I know it's a marketing term, but they keep using this word hyper-converged, where they talked about, making your NAS more functional, more of a home lab server with, virtual machine hosting and Linux containers, and it was built to top Debian.
Let's start at the beginning. How is it, as far as being a replacement for FreeNAS and TrueNAS Core? How, just as a NAS, how is TrueNAS Scale treating you?
It's been fantastic. The first thing that I did was I moved my drives over into the new machine. I imported the drives, and I started recreating, my shares, my snapshot tasks, all that stuff. It took just a couple, I want to say a couple minutes, but not very long to set all that up from scratch. And on the first or second day, my NAS was functioning, running TrueNAS Scale. And that was a big deal to me, because my NAS is my primary storage. I have a bunch of SSDs in my machine.
You're happy with it being a file server?
Yeah, it's my file server. It does absolutely everything that I needed it to do. It's my primary storage. It's where I do all my work, all my video editing, all my blogging. It does all that stuff. Scale does everything for me that Core was doing before, and that was my number one requirement. So I'm really excited about that. And in my blog, it seems like it was disproportionate. There's not much to say. It's like, hey, it works great. It does exactly what I expected it to do.
But what about what's not living up to your expectations with TrueNAS Scale so far? I was
really excited when their marketing material talked about, this hyper-converged concept, that I could bring. I've got a separate home lab machine that's a dual ancient Xeons that eat a bunch of power. I was real excited about taking the VMs that I had on it and consolidating them over onto my new Scale box. And I was excited to start, I don't want to say learning and tinkering with their apps, or the things that are running in Linux containers.
And it looked neat that they have an app store of some sort.
Yeah, I think that's, of all the things that I've always kind of wished that TrueNAS did, that things like Unraid or Synology or QNAP are all doing better, are these ideas of apps and plugins, a store where you can just go and install other things and run it right on your NAS. And I was kind of excited to try that out, except I ran into problems with the virtual machines to start off with. And this is, I think this is ticky tack, but my Home Assistant VM runs on my home lab machine, and I've got a Z-Wave USB stick that talks to some of my home automation gear, and you can't do USB device pass-through to a virtual machine in Scale. It's using KVM, and KVM will do it. And if you want to, you can go to the command line and pass the arguments to KVM, and it'll do it temporarily. But the next time that virtual machine reboots, whatever you've got configured in the Scale middleware is going to overwrite that. So you would have to constantly be rerunning that command every time the virtual machine got restarted, which is kind of a bummer. I'm running that virtual machine still on my home lab machine. I'm going to keep it plugged in until they add that feature in, or they not even add that feature in. Allow me to use that feature is really what they need to do. So that was one bummer. And then the other bummer was it's a separate organization. They're called TrueCharts, and they have a huge suite of apps that they've already got set up and working. I guess it's technically a third party. It's not it's not the official TrueNAS catalog, but just about everything that you'd want to do. I imagine most of the things that you'd find, out there for other NAS distributions. But I ran into a problem, and I went to their community to ask for help. And I don't know the best way to say this other than to say it's a hostile place. I mean, it's over.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to be mean or go into detail and be mean to anyone.
Yeah.
That's a good statement.
Yeah, I went in, I asked my question. It wasn't received very well. And then I was given instructions to go ask in another part of their Discord server. And then when I tried to do that, I didn't have the permissions. So I asked the moderator in direct messages, and he kind of scolded me for asking him a moderation question in direct messages. So then I just said, well, forget it. If the TrueChart stuff, if I can make it work, I can make it work. If it doesn't, then I'm not using anything from their catalog.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have an app and you're gonna have that app store, it needs to work.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're gonna be having to manually tinker with it, why start with TrueNAS Scale? Why wouldn't you just start with Debian and build your VMs and install your Docker images and just do it?
That's one of the things.
Why do you don't want to work around the framework that they're trying to set up? But the framework needs to work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that was one of the things that I thought of when I was writing that blog. I was like, hey, is this? I don't think it is. Is this TrueNAS Scale letting me down, or is this me just finally outgrowing, a pre-built appliance like NAS distribution? I don't know the answer to that question yet. I don't think it's either. I think I'll find a way to work within Scale. I'll make it work. I'll make it work. I'm happy with TrueNAS Scale so far. And I think it's
a fine NAS.
It's a fantastic NAS. It's got a ton of potential that I didn't think existed for TrueNAS Core, and I wasn't real confident that I would see that kind of promise for TrueNAS Core. So I'm excited that I switched to it. I'm excited to start using it. And I guess I'm excited to see if I've completely outgrown it. And if maybe not next year or the year after, maybe I'm just building something of my own from scratch.
It sounds like you're doing a good job, Tubby.
I hope so. I have actually never looked at, well, I've looked at Unraid, Frank, but I've never really done anything with it or installed it. Maybe I did. If I did, it was on a virtual machine, and I've long since forgotten about it. I've always been a little bit turned off from Unraid's, between their software licensing and the proprietary file system. I like Scale. I like ZFS. I like the fact that today, if I said I'm done with Scale, I'm going to go build something of my own, I can pick whatever distribution of Linux that I want that supports OpenZFS, and I can import my data right into it. I think that's Scale's biggest advantage over something like Unraid.
I have way more trust in ZFS than I do Unraid.
Yeah,
ZFS has so much work put into it to make it reliable and stable and resilient.
If I understand it correctly, you can do ZFS inside of Unraid now.
Yeah, but when we hear Unraid, we think of Unraid as a RAID level, a proprietary RAID level that Unraid sells. That's what I'd love to know if Unraid is easier to use than FreeNAS and TrueNAS.
Yeah,